most surprised you when you started investigating the story and started filming? What story unfolded, or what issue arose, or what perspective did you end up seeing that most surprised you?
You know, I had to say that, and first of all, thank you again for all being here. I really appreciate you hanging out. You know, the Cassie story unfolded in the way that every documentary filmmaker dreams about. I mean, it really was one of those things where I was basically trolling on websites trying to find a story. You know, who knows about the Haynesville, who has something going on. And Cassie Fitzgerald sent me this very sort of, you know, 2-line email in the middle of 50 2-line emails that was, my name is Cassie Fitzgerald, I think you might find my story interesting. And it was just getting started. She had no idea all this was going to happen to her. All she knew was that she was somebody who was mad, she felt like she was being taken advantage of, and she wanted her story at least explored. And to watch that unfold, you know, we lived it along with her, and it just, I mean, our office was always on pins and needles to find out what happened to Cassie. So it was amazing to watch her story happen.
And when did you finish filming? So when was the 1 year later? What year was that?
The 1 year later was, where is Mark here? I want to say 2010 is when we filmed it.
So anything unfolded with that story since then?
Well, you know, Cassie, what progressed from Cassie's story was when she won this motion to move the case back to a local court, which was a big deal for her. Because, you know, I guess we always joke about the fact that Cassie maybe thought that Exxon was just that little convenience store at the corner. Maybe she didn't realize it was a global conglomerate that could crush her. And so, you know, when she won that was a big deal. And right after that, there was a discovery phase, and then Exxon asked to start a settlement phase. And right now she's in the settlement phase of the whole process. Now, is it a fast process? I mean, we thought we'd be able to go in there and see Exxon handing this community a check. It's not that easy, I guess. And they're still working on it, but she's moved to this amazing point where all the things that she wanted is kind of being put on the table as being possible.
Religion shows up in the movie to an extent that I would not have predicted when I started watching movies. Is that something that kind of naturally unfolded, or is that a storyline that you pursued? Tell me about that. I don't know, connection between religion and energy.
It's because they're all Jewish, right?
Right.
Yeah. No, it's it's funny, and there's a piece that everyone should read about the people that's very interesting. Charlie Krause wrote it for the New York Times, and I had dinner with him when he was first coming into the Shreveport area, and one of the things he asked me about, he said, what are sort of the pervading factors here? And religion is one of them, and you can't escape it in that area of Louisiana, how there's all this faith that's involved. And there was part of me that really, at first maybe I kind of shied away from it, but it is such an intrinsic part of the story. And Regis wasn't even necessarily my favorite story until you really start to kind of see how he starts to shape what his vision is. And also I think my fear with Regis, was at the beginning, there's this stereotype of the way preachers are and how they're sort of either megalomaniacal or they are all for themselves. Regis, to me, and hopefully it comes across in the film, really breaks that stereotype a little bit. I mean, he's a guy that lives in a very modest house but has these big dreams for this very poor community. And the fortunate and the unfortunate part is that we call, and we're in Shreveport, the Shreveport area now, but we called Austin home, and religion wasn't necessarily a part of sort of that contemporary progressive mindset. And moving to Shreveport, it felt sort of weird, and I actually am Jewish, so it's like me and Regis had some very interesting conversations about God at various times during our filming, but it is something that really rings true to what the characters are about and what their makeup is.
Questions from folks? Do you mind, please, coming up to the mic? That'd be great. It's just the audio works a lot better.
Make it quite the scene. Way to jog down there. Make it count.
Really excited to ask the question.
Actually, if you don't mind giving your name and
Sure.
what program you're in, that'd be great.
My name's Kent Trucor. I'm a dual degree in the business school and the environmental school.
Cool.
And, you know, the stories that you brought about, there's thousands of them, and how shale develops throughout the country. Have you had any idea of how your film has influenced the development of shale throughout the country?
I don't know how much it's influenced the development of shale per se. I do know empirically. I'd say empirically. That's probably a bad thing to say in front of a professor. But anecdotally, that our film has been sort of taken and gone way beyond us. At first, I paid for this movie. My friends and family put money into this movie, and you want to make that money back. And I was pretty stringent about paying for licenses and things like that. But you get these emails that are like, hey, I took this down to my public library, and me and my 200 friends saw the film and loved it. And I'm like, going, God, couldn't you have bought 2 DVDs? And so I know it's getting out there, and I know it's sort of at least setting a rhythm where, again, creating that table in the middle where people can sit and start discussing responsible development of the shale across the country. And that's what I'm going for more than anything.
Thank you.
All right, jog back. There you go. Come on.
Hi, my name is Daniel Ramey. I'm a second-year public policy graduate student here. In the film, which I saw a couple days ago, and I didn't actually sit down here tonight and rewatch it, so if I'm missing anything, remind me. In the film, you focus a lot on individuals and the individual stories. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how some of the communities around them have changed through either businesses or infrastructure development or anything like that surrounding the development of the shale.
Yeah. I mean, I do have to say it's an interesting sort of tale of two cities. I mean, you look at Mansfield, and the city itself made so much money that they are like fixing streets. I mean, actually in Mansfield, Louisiana, which is one of the poorest parishes in Louisiana, when I was filming, there were streets within the city limits that still weren't paved, which to me is beyond me. And to see them sort of put that money back into infrastructure, you definitely see that. You also see those who, like it or not, took their money and they went and bought yellow Humvees, because God knows, everybody needs a yellow Humvee. There's that, and then there are those who didn't make anything, and the people who either held out or they weren't in a section that was being drilled on, or they rented their property, or they were like Cassie, and there's friction there. I mean, there's no doubt that money, when one neighbor is prosperous and the other one isn't, there is a friction that you can't overlook there. So it's been very interesting. There's a very fascinating dichotomy that if that's your area of study, it's a thing to focus on, because I think when you look, especially in Louisiana, and you look in Pennsylvania, and less so in the Eagle Ford down in the Texas, because they're big landowners, but it's interesting to see the way that the dynamics of the community play out.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
Sorry to get around here. Hello,
Hey.
my name is Kat.
What does your shirt say?
Durham, it's not for everyone.
Ah, excellent. Excellent.
But it's for us.
That's excellent.
For us.
Okay.
My name is Kat Fraser. I'm a second-year student here at the Nicholas School in the energy concentration. So I first heard about your documentary while I was, after I watched Gasland, and I did a little research, and everyone, was pointing towards your documentary, saying this was sort of the antithesis, sort of the pro-industry take on the whole issue. And I didn't see it that way at all, and I'm just curious what industry's reaction has been, or how people have, approached you about sort of, what your bias or your non-bias is on the issue.
Well, I definitely have, I've definitely gotten crushed by both extreme sides of the issue. Industry, there are those in industry, the drill baby drill people, who just don't like the film. They don't. They don't like the introduction of sort of like this balanced solution at the end, or us saying that we're going to leave fossil fuels behind at some point and move forward. The environmental side has sort of jumped on the other side of that, saying that because I say pro-natural gas, or I have a brother who is in the oil and gas business, that I am tainted by industry. I think therein lies the huge problem of polarization in the energy issue that is keeping us from moving forward. I have a real problem with both sides of the issue that are really creating stasis in the middle. When we first made this film, Gasland wasn't around, and there wasn't necessarily that polarization. Does everybody know who Bill McKibben is? I mean, Bill McKibben, Michael Weber, all these people kind of speaking on the same subject, moving the same issue forward is a big deal. It's really cool to watch it. But when Gasland came out, and kudos to Josh Fox for making a film and wanting to start a conversation. But when it came out, all of a sudden you were either on one side or the other. There was no middle ground. And I really do challenge people to see this film and not say that I really tried to look at both sides of the issue and come up with something that was, again, rational, sustainable, and affordable. And also a timeline that makes sense. So I would like to think that I'm in the middle of the issue, and I'm trying to work towards a clean energy solution. But again, I think there are always those people out there that will say that because you didn't take one side or the other, then you are whatever I don't want you to be that day. So it sucks, but again, we were filming in Washington, and I was talking to a gentleman from the Council on Foreign Relations, and he said, when both sides hate you, that means that you're really doing your job correctly. So.
Well done. Thanks.
Other questions? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Ravena Lewis. I'm a second year at the Nicholas School. You talk a lot about natural gas being a bridge fuel to this renewable energy source, and especially given the falling prices of natural gas, do you really see it replacing coal, or do you see it being used in addition to coal to sort of boosting our energy use to higher levels?
I feel really weird answering this question next to Richard.
Maybe this question for him.
Richard, can you take that? Again, to me,
I'm not here.
To me, I have to say that my personal opinion, especially upon making this film, gas prices were a little higher. There wasn't necessarily that competition that natural gas and renewables probably have at some point. But as I learned today in deep conversations with Richard, and I totally think is the coolest thing in the world, is that natural gas can maybe get us to those carbon reductions, or at least down the road to some carbon reductions, just by using natural gas in lieu of coal. While I realize I know what coal does, and I understand the advantages, I'd like to believe that natural gas could maybe take the place of coal down the line some, and at least move us into a place where we'll be better positioned for a clean energy future. Richard, did I do okay with that?
I mean, I'll just, since I got drawn into it, I'll just say one thing, which is, you raise a good point, which is that if you use the natural gas and you use the coal, you use it all, then you haven't made any progress in aggregate, right? And so I think the part of the solution there that is kind of a necessary ingredient to making it work is something that induces that transition over time. And that kind of a transition isn't going to naturally happen of its own accord. I mean, the tendency would be to use all of the least expensive energy regardless of what its environmental consequences are. And so there needs to be some kind of a reason to change that. But other questions? Yeah.
My name is David Jasensky. I'm also a second year in the energy program. What struck me about the film, I actually asked Kat before we came here, I said, is this a pro or against or an in-between film? And she said it's not really either. It's kind of in between. There's some good stories and some bad stories, mixed stories,
And that sounds pretty emphatic. Thank you, Kat.
But what struck me after watching it was it seemed more of a portrait. There didn't seem to be, it was kind of showing these people's lives and how they developed along with this event. And occurred to me, did you have sort of an initial conception of what you wanted the film to be? Because it seemed kind of was just unrolling along with the shale gas story. It wasn't the economic picture. It wasn't the.
I would say thank you. No, I mean, because really, I mean, to me, it really, the film was highly designed to be one of those things that does unfold at the pace of the shale gas revolution. You know, again, without making sort of assumptions or diving into sort of the infogram that's there. I mean, I almost look at it as, or the way I should say it was designed is to get sort of the human element of what happens. And it's not always the most dramatic, and it's always not totally tied to the dollar figure, but then letting sort of that spoonful of the personal story helping the energy story go down. I mean, what I wanted to do is take people down to a very tertiary level, let them understand what these people are about, but also see contextually what all this energy actually means. All these little things, these small human stories, when you start to really look at the energy that's under the ground, what can it possibly do to move us forward to a better place? And really, the energy story came second. I mean, it really was it was a portrait. It was a portrait of these people and of the land and of their love of the land and what was going on when things sort of change on them. But really contextually, to make it have gravity, I wanted to add this energy story, which again, I mean, I really do believe that this is one of those steps that we need to take, this idea of stopping and assessing where we are in moving forward towards a clean energy future. So, I mean, both those stories are there. It's just the human stories are just supposed to be that, stories of a time.
Could I ask another question? It'd be shorter than the first one.
Yeah.
So we just had a fracking conference here a week, half ago, and one of the discussions, something I hadn't thought about, was that you kind of, with these resource booms, with little development around them, you can kind of have a boom-bust cycle. Is that something that's a concern? And this was in the context of the Marcellus, but is that also a concern here where perhaps, you know, these economic resources aren't being invested for the long run and it just may be concentrated amongst a few people and kind of go up to thin air?
I think that there is that risk. I think there's a risk of it right now. I mean, I talked to somebody the other day who said, by their estimation, the Haynesville is a bust right now. And the reason that it's a bust right now is because the rigs were moving on to some of these oil shales that were there because, of course, the oil price is a lot more sort of lucrative than the gas price. Now, they're still drilling in the Haynesville, but I do think that slowdown definitely has an impact. Now, I also believe right now Oxford is doing a study in Shreveport, Louisiana, and what they're trying to do, and I hope I'm explaining this right, at least this is what the guy told me, is that they're trying to, Oxford's taking the Norwegian model of building like a war chest or a trust fund and trying to convince the Shreveport government to do the same with like its proceeds to go and build sort of this trust fund that actually pays them back and they can actually build a sustaining sort of revenue source. So, I mean, that's at least a step in the right direction than everybody rushing down to the craps tables at Harris, you know. So you hope that there's a little of both that going on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So you're trying to get him, I'm Rob Curry, I'm a joint degree with business school and the environmental school. And you're in the media business, you're trying to get this story about the rational middle out to the world. And I appreciate the attempt and thought it was a great film. My question is, who would be your ideal champion to really get the story of the rational middle out to the country? For instance, Brad Pitt went into New Orleans after Katrina. Everybody was focused on rebuilding the lower ninth ward correctly, whether you're for or against the history.
Yeah.
So who would that champion be? You know, you used to write for the New York Times. They have this drilling down series, which is regularly on the front page, but
Right.
It says things, the headline reads like, learning too late about the perils of gas leases. So it's anti. Art's from Houston. Everybody in Houston is very pro. Who would be the ideal person, filmmaker, someone in the media business, David Brooks, I don't know, to push this message out for the rational middle?
Well, you know, I actually believe I'm an optimist, and I believe that there is this coalescing of sort of influential forces that are starting to understand the true risks and the true rewards, how to mitigate those risks, and how to reap the rewards. I think that if you pin me down on people, I think David Brooks is a great example of somebody who's good. I think Charlie Krause is good. The Ian Urbina pieces, in the New York Times are what they are. I mean, they're very well built on the anti-side, and let me say this: they're very well built on the hyper-pro side. I think that there needs to be almost like a populist voice given to this group in the middle. I mean, what I keep seeing as I go out there and I'm able to talk to guys like you, or I'm able to talk to a theater full of community people, is a group that feels very misinformed and very misused by either side of the issue. I hope that side can be sort of energized through, we have another project going on that we're going to try to build 10 short films that are really going to give people down the line information on energy and on what a clean energy future could look like. I had this belief that I can build Occupy Rational Middle. I don't know. It's like, I'm thinking of the T-shirt, and the Durham person's gone, and maybe she can help me. But the fact is that I really do believe that there is a group that wants to be spoken to, and if we can find the right way to hook into them, that they'll get energized and activate.
Hi, my name is Virginia Palacios, and I'm from South Texas. I noticed that you chose to focus this film on royalty owners, and I was wondering, part of this whole debate has been sort of this war against jobs and environmentalists, and I was wondering why you never talked to, say, some blue-collar worker. We did the numbers on a guy in South Texas who's making the lowest paid job, and it's $7,600 a month. So I was wondering why you didn't really tell that story at all, or show the hardcore environmentalists who are against fracking.
I had to say that for better or worse, it just didn't happen in Louisiana like it did in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, it really is sort of, I don't know if you guys read the report the ombudsman wrote for the New York Times about when he went in and sort of asked his own reporters, why didn't you find somebody in the middle who kind of understood both sides of it? What the reporters told the ombudsman was, nobody in Pennsylvania is you're either for or you're against. There's nobody that really understands the middle part of this. So, in Louisiana, in our area of Louisiana, there wasn't a huge environmental movement that was picketing, drilling sites. So we really searched hard to find environmentalists, and we just couldn't find them, for better or worse. As far as the job side of it, we had a limited amount of time, we had a very limited budget, and we just never got around to it. Again, the piece wasn't really built to be sort of an advocacy piece for shale gas. It was built as a piece about these people, and then we put the context on, afterwards. So maybe we were a little too early on that part of it, but again, I think it's interesting, it needs to be explored. We just didn't do it in our film.
I'm Ryan. I'm from the School of Business, just one degree. The film was taking place when they were coming in to begin drilling, and it was the early stages. You mentioned DeBerry in the film and some of the negative consequences there. In your research and in filming, did you come across many communities that had a little more hindsight and look back upon the drilling?
I don't know about the hindsight aspect of it. I think that Mike has a modicum of regret. We did a screening in November where we invited all the characters back. We rented out a theater in Shreveport. We invited all the characters back. We told them to invite their friends and their family and really have them sit with us and watch the film again. And it was a really awesome night. And in talking to Mike after the fact, and he's starting to build his house in this kind of suburban area, and I think that he has some regrets. I think that the film shows him kind of wrestling with the idea, and then he jumps into sort of the money pot. that's about as much hindsight as I've seen. Now, there have been things that have happened in Louisiana that have spooked people. I mean, there've been there was a blowout about a year ago where they had to deal with these consequences. Everyone thinks it's sort of risk-free. Now the difference between the people in Louisiana is the people in Louisiana are used to being drilled on. They're used to dealing with the industry. I mean, I actually would put Mike Smith up against just about any environmentalist as far as seeing the land and understanding what's going on with it. Like, he can go out there and really kind of identify that tree wasn't supposed to be taken down, or they're not supposed to be cutting that road there, it's supposed to be 20 feet over. So it's a different type of play. It's not so histrionic, but if something goes wrong, they know who to call with the state. They know how to get things done. And again, if something is off, they're the first one to call someone out on it. So, I think that there's not, that 5 or that 10 years where like, holy crap, I'm for everybody in the web audience, sorry. But holy crap, I really wish these guys hadn't been here. There's just no, I think maybe it's too young, or they just don't think that way in that area of Louisiana.
Thanks.
Thank you for your question. Hey.
My name is Nick Brumleve. I'm a dual degree with the School of the Environment and the Business School. And you mentioned that you had started this piece as a human piece and then added the energy component on later. So what turning point in your documentary did you decide to reach out to the energy experts or get more in depth on the energy economy?
That's a great question. And I think that it was when we realized, I wasn't sure when we were making the film whether we were making a film about a boom-bust cycle, which also can happen very quickly, right? So, for me, there was this sort of this patient waiting, and I'm not even sure I was even thinking about it at the time, but when all of a sudden we had trusted sources within the area starting to really believe in this energy source, and not only that, but to give us like numbers, like that Dave Benscotter guy, the guy at the very beginning, he looks and says, that's a gas field. We actually saw him do that like live, and then we actually brought a camera in later. So once he started to kind of really break down the numbers for us and go over the amounts of energy, well, then we knew that we had to kind of get on our horse and make this into something bigger.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, I thought you did a terrific job on the the role of the landman and how the economics changed so dramatically, and how in many ways the lack of information in the community was over time was addressed by the efforts of that young lady. But I don't think, I guess if you were going to do an update immediately today, you'd have to see the relative collapse in value of leases now. And I think the rig count's down by about 50%. You're following this, I'm sure.
Yeah, we follow it, pretty closely when we can. But now, the price of an acre in the Haynesville, I think is maybe like $1,200. So there are people there who, we were following people who were holding out, waiting for $30,000 an acre, and it might have got to $26,000, and then it went to zero basically. And once all these companies had spent all this money, that is probably that's my little wink at being MTV. It definitely got weirdly high, and it will probably never get that high again. But but to your point on the landman, the one issue, or one of the issues I definitely had in the filming of that was that, and I guess it always happens during an energy boom, was that there were times that the industry just did not act responsibly, and especially in this phase of it. And I've always stumped for this idea that industry has to do their job right. There is a social responsibility when you go into these communities to be a good partner. And the one thing that I would call some particular members of the industry, they just didn't do their job right. And I forget who asked about sort of like if there was any hindsight, the hindsight question. But you know, part of that hindsight was, I wish we had known. I wish we had, and again, I understand business, Cassie understands business, but some of the business practices were somewhat nefarious, you know, and that's on the land side. I think that what has happened in Louisiana, because of this knowledge about the gas industry, this very sort of scrutinizing eye that a lot of the people have down there, is that the industry has had to act correctly, because the community will call the state Department of Environmental Quality, and they come up and, like with this blowout, and they shut down a well that's $10 million to drill, and Scott Angel comes up and says, plug it and abandon and get out. I mean, the industry doesn't like that either. So they sort of have an economic reason to act correctly, and it seems like at this point they're doing that, at least in the Louisiana area.
Thanks. Gregory, thank you for coming.
Hey, thank you.
Could you just speak a little bit about the new films you're about to do, and what are the subjects that you're going to hit on with the Rational Energy Middle series?
Yeah, and the new project that we're working on was sort of born out of a screening that we had at the Aspen Ideas Festival, and right now, I mean, while we're not officially launching anything, we're filming this series of 10 films that we hope can strike at the heart of getting people the right information. And when I say the right information, I don't want to tell people how to think, but I want to give people at least information that they can arm themselves to really teach themselves more about it. I mean, instead of sort of being forced into a corner and being, you know, told that this is bad and this is good, what I want to do is I want to bring the world's foremost energy experts and let them kind of sit at that table and teach us about energy, teach us about the potential of the sources that we have now and the detriments of the sources that we have now, and then take us ultimately to a place where we can really start discussing and working on a cleaner energy future. I mean, something that is realistic. I mean, what we did in Haynesville, we want to take big and wide and bring to a public that, you know, we want to democratize this information. I mean, part of the Rational Metal Energy series is that we want to take this information, we want to put it online in HD quality, and if Richard or Cy want to take it and put it in their classroom, if somebody wants to put it in sort of a policy meeting, if somebody wants to show their community, we're also working with a media partner. We want to go far and wide with this, at least have our voices heard, because as somebody said to us in an interview in DC, it's about time that the middle get outraged. It's about time that the middle says, you know what, this current climate sucks, and we've got to start working on a solution now, because we are at a crossroads, and we do have to start thinking about what we're doing to the planet and to the environment and what we need energy-wise, and we need to start moving towards a solution.
I think that actually might be a good place for us to close. I want to really thank Gregory for coming out here, for airing the film. I mean, hopefully people in the audience here take this away, and I guess also anybody who watches the web takes away and you know, takes this information along with the other things they're hearing to better educate themselves and you know, participate in this energy conversation. Well,
and I will say that, because I've got to say it, DVDs are available at www.haynesvillemovie.com. It's beer money for us. It gets us around. We appreciate it. Also, it's also on iTunes. Tell your friends about it. Again, you know, we want this to be kind of the stepping stone to something bigger for the issue itself. So again, I just really appreciate you guys being here and having us. Cy, thank you for having us. Richard, thank you for having us. It's just been awesome. And you know, as much as a UT fan, I'm not supposed to like Duke. I think that this is an amazing place, and I appreciate you guys having us here. Thank you.